When Lily Navarro appeared at the edge of Orange Cliffs, after 1 year missing, she barely resembled her former self, barefoot with shredded feet, a body emaciated to the point where bones protruded clearly, and deep rope marks embedded in her skin. She was one of 3 people who had vanished in the red rock wilderness of Canyonlands, a place so treacherous that everyone believed all 3 had long since perished. But the most horrifying part was not what Canyonlands had done to her body. The most horrifying part was what she whispered about 1 year in the darkness, about footsteps that had followed them from the very first hour, and about 2 figures she called the hunters in the desert. And what chilled the agents more than anything was what she said was still out there, hidden deep in the seemingly endless rock crevices of the maze. Some names and details have been changed to protect identities and privacy. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. The scorching afternoon in Canyonlands stretched out like a burning red silk sheet, the ground trembling lightly under the desert heat, making everything appear distorted in the shimmering air. The sheer cliffs along Syncline Loop were stained deep crimson, casting long shadows across the cracked stone floor, forming jagged lines, as if sliced by a blade. On that afternoon, 3 young people, Mason Hale, Lily Navarro and Cole Barrett, began the exploration trip they had planned for weeks. They laughed and talked as they stepped onto the trail, each carrying a light backpack and water bottles that sloshed lightly with every stride. None of them knew that it would be the last time they entered this land so carefree. As the 3 ventured deeper into the canyon, 2 other hikers leaving the area saw them pass by, Mason leading with a confident stride, Lily staying close behind to avoid slipping on the slanted rock surface, and Cole raising his camera to snap a few quick shots before hurrying to catch up with the group. All 3 headed toward the lower elevation, their shadows gradually swallowed by the massive cliff walls, turning into 3 small black dots before disappearing around a sharp bend in the terrain. The 2 hikers paused for a few seconds, listening to the footsteps echoing down like small explosions on the rock. Suddenly, a sound rose from the canyon depths, unclear whether it was human or just wind trapped in an echo. It was sharp and brief, like a choked call, making both of them turn back. But when they tried to pinpoint the sound, there was only the hot wind blowing through, swirling red dust into the emptiness. One of them casually said it might have been just falling rocks or the wind distorting sounds, and they continued on their way, unaware that that sound would become the center of every question later on. As the sun began to sink behind the massive coral-like rock layers, the red hue shifted to pale purple. The Canyonland sky at sunset was breathtakingly beautiful, yet it carried an eerie feeling as darkness flooded in too quickly. At the parking lot, the meeting point where the 3 had planned to return, no one saw them emerge. 1 hour passed, then 2, as the desert wind turned biting cold, and the sky turned completely pitch black, anxiety replaced patience. Family members tried calling all 3, Mason, Lily and Cole, but every call went to voicemail or showed no signal. The Canyonlands night made the space feel even more deadly, with only the howling wind and the crunching sand under the footsteps of those waiting. Other vehicles in the lot gradually left, leaving just 2 families standing together, flashlight beams flickering in the darkness, as they searched for any sign of their loved ones. Time dragged on heavily. It was well past midnight, the temperature had dropped sharply, and in the growing panic, they realized this was no longer just a matter of being late, or simply getting lost. After dozens of unanswered calls, desperate GPS checks, and names shouted into the night with no response, they were forced to do what no family ever wants: call the police. With just that one call, the mysterious disappearance of 3 young people in the Redlands of Canyonlands officially began. When the missing persons call was routed to the Canyonlands National Park Control Center, the Special Ranger team immediately activated the Rapid Response Protocol. No one waited for dawn. In this desert region, the night can conceal far more than daylight reveals. Off-road vehicles roared toward Syncline Loop, with engines growling, headlights sweeping across massive deep crimson rock formations, stretching shadows into bizarre shapes. The night wind pouring through the canyons was biting cold, but carried the familiar scent of sandstone dust, the kind that tells anyone who has worked here that they are stepping into a search that will be anything but easy. As soon as they arrived, no one wasted a second. They shone flashlights onto the ground, where Mason, Lily, and Cole had begun their journey. The shoe prints were still fresh, clearly imprinted in the fine sand, one large and heavy men's pair, one medium size, and one lighter pair. Those were 3 footprints matching the description of the young group. One ranger used a ruler, placed it next to the largest print, and nodded slightly, size 11, estimated weight matching Mason. The other 2 were also confirmed. All were in a straight line, heading toward the descent into the canyon, exactly as described by the 2 hikers who saw them leave the main trail. But then a flashlight beam swung to the left, and another shoe print gradually appeared in the light, one that didn't match the other 3. It was larger, deeper, and had a toe section with sharp horizontal grooves, the kind of sole only seen on tactical boots or heavy work boots. One ranger frowned, crouched low, twisting his hand to view the print from different angles. The tread pattern was too distinct to belong to any member of the missing group. The surrounding terrain also showed this print wasn't accidental. The person who left it had stood observing from the trail edge, as if pausing there for a while. The air around them went quiet for a few seconds. A strange shoe print was not something rangers wanted to see in a missing persons case. They began following the trail of Mason, Lily, and Cole's prints. In the initial section, everything still seemed normal. The footsteps were steady, even, with no signs of fleeing or panic. But the deeper they went, the footprints started becoming abnormal. Ranger Rhodes, famous for reading tracks like reading pages in a book, quietly followed close, eyes never leaving the ground. About 50 meters from the trailhead, he stopped and raised his hand as a signal. Flashlight beams immediately focused on the rock surface in front of Rhodes. A strip of rock was heavily scratched, forming a long streak, next to soil churned up, and small rocks scattered in a fan pattern. Rhodes lightly touched the edge of the skid mark. Someone was dragged, he said quietly, not for drama, but because the evidence was too clear. Mason's footprints ended right before the skid, Lily's veered off suddenly, and Cole's showed he had backed up a few steps before being forced to change direction. This no longer resembled the behavior of 3 people hiking in difficulty. This was a struggle. The others spread out to scan the area with flashlights, looking for more signs. Another ranger discovered broken branches and dust pressed down in the shape of a hand bracing. Cole or Lily had tried to stay balanced while being pushed. About 10 meters farther, fine soil bore a deep and straight groove like the mark of something heavy dragged across. Everything told the same story. The 3 did not turn off voluntarily. They were forced to turn. The team leader decided to deploy a thermal drone to expand the search range in the darkness. The drone shot upward, its red light blinking like a tiny point in the black sky. The images fed back to the control screen showed only cold rock and sparse vegetation, with absolutely no heat signatures large enough to be human bodies. This was both a finding and a void that made no one feel more reassured. If anyone was there, they were no longer in this scanned area. Rhodes continued backing up, observing the overall picture. He looked at the strange print, shallow but firm, placed very evenly, with no signs of carrying heavy load. This person wasn't carrying a backpack, Rhodes noted, not moving fast, not stumbling, just standing observing then following. Another ranger asked if it could be a volunteer or park staff print, but Rhodes shook his head immediately. The stride pattern wasn't that of someone on duty. The person who left it was very relaxed, not someone coming to assist or patrol. This was the stride of someone actively stalking. In many years on the job, rangers rarely drew conclusions without enough evidence, but everything the scene showed was too clear. The skid marks indicated violent impact, the handprints and displaced rocks indicated resistance. The strange shoe print indicated the presence of someone outside the group, and the absence of footprints leaving in the opposite direction meant the 3 had been led away, not departed willingly. A young ranger looked toward the pitch-black path leading deep into the canyon, where every sound was swallowed by the massive cliff walls. If they encountered someone, he said, that person was prepared in advance. No one replied, but the silence agreed more than any affirmation. When all initial evidence was compiled, the team leader stated clearly for everyone to note, "We rule out getting lost." Rhodes added, voice low but firm, "There's human involvement here." And with that statement, the case was officially shifted from a hiking incident to an investigation of human intervention right in the Canyonlands darkness, an investigation where every first step pointed to this not being a random event. No one knew what they would find ahead, but everyone understood that the fourth shoe print was the starting point of all remaining questions. By dawn, the federal tracking team, experts capable of reading desert footprints like lines of text, was dispatched from Moab. They arrived while the temperature was still cold, and night dew clung to the rock slabs, the ideal time to read traces before harsh sunlight destroyed the most fragile details. These people were not just rangers, they were specialists with years of experience, tracking in the harshest terrains of the West. From a single faint print, they could assess weight, height, and even the mental state of the person who left it. Rhodes led them to the area he had marked the previous night. An expert named Marcus knelt down, using a soft brush to sweep away the thin layer of dust over the disturbed soil. He placed his hand next to the strange shoe print, examining every groove. "This isn't a hiking boot," he said. The horizontal grooves at the toe, clearly an older military-style boot, the kind often used in survival units. Marcus measured the print length, nearly 32 centimeters, then stood up, scanning the entire area, as if seeing a map forming in his mind. "This person is at least 6 feet 1 inch tall, stride very steady, even pressure, not carrying heavy load." Another expert walked along the trail of Mason, Lily and Cole's footprints, but the farther from the trailhead, the more chaotic and shallow the prints became, as if someone had deliberately disturbed them to destroy the evidence. However, one of the most common tactics they had seen in intentional cases appeared clearly, the overprint pattern. Marcus pointed to the ground. "Right here, very deep tread impression, then compacted soil on top." He explained, "This guy stepped on Mason's or Cole's prints to cover them, but he's much heavier, so he accidentally created new ones." A young ranger bent down, amazed that the abstract dust held such information. The tracker just smiled. "Footprints don't lie. They always tell their own story." The deeper they went, the clearer the story became. Mason's prints showed the weight of someone leading, Lily's were even strides, Cole's had small pivots when he stopped to take photos. But the strange prints carried the signature of stalking, unhurried steps, maintaining consistent distance behind, then suddenly closing in at the struggle site. The trackers collected data at each point, depth, force direction, balance level. Then they built the journey map in their minds. This person was following them from very early on, Marcus concluded, not a chance encounter. This was stalking. The group fell silent, listening as he continued. "Look here." Marcus walked to the edge of a narrow drop-off, where a large boulder jutted out. On the thin sand layer covering the rock was another strange print, almost perfect. It pointed straight out toward the vast emptiness beyond the canyon. But the remarkable part wasn't the direction of the print, it was the duration of the standstill. He pointed to the collapsed soil around the edges, soil compression deeper than normal. This person stood here for quite a while. Light reflecting up from the canyon bottom onto the rock face would have made his shadow clearly visible at night. Someone was observing, assessing, choosing the moment. The rangers around him exchanged glances. They had seen many cases of hikers getting separated, lost or injured, but it was rare to find a strange print with this kind of waiting-watching stance. It carried none of the confusion or route-finding behavior. It resembled the actions of a predator lying in wait. Another expert, Elena, continued analyzing the stride pattern. His left foot has a slight inward turn. Very solid steps. This person has been trained. She turned and pointed toward the long skid mark, and he moved in on the group with precision. No hesitation marks. Their work was like piecing together puzzle fragments, scattered across the desert floor. Each print was compared to terrain distances, each skid mark to the height of the person who left it. The analysis results made the atmosphere grow heavier. Anyone capable of moving comfortably on slick rock, knowing how to obscure tracks, choosing observation points, and attacking with accuracy. That was not the random appearance of a lost tourist. Rhodes surveyed the entire area one more time. He got here before them, Marcus nodded, or ambushed along the way. Elena added, no fleeing footsteps. The three were walking normally, until the attack. None of them detected him first. This increased the likelihood that the person who left the prints was actively hunting them. Step by step, the profile of the stranger grew clearer in their notes. Height approximately 6 feet 1 inch to 6 feet 3 inches. Gait of someone carrying no load, moving lightly but steadily. Military-style boots, type commonly used by survival units or people living off-grid. Stalking pattern lasting many minutes. Stood observing from a position with long sightlines. Chose attack point where terrain was steep. Victims had limited resistance options. The younger rangers felt the air grow heavy. These footprints told a story too clearly. This was not a hiking accident. No one frantically fleeing a rockfall. No simple scattering from fear. It was a series of deliberate actions, one step at a time. Marcus slowly stepped back from the edge, looking at the print one last time before voicing what everyone was thinking. Someone was hunting them from the start. Those words quietly dissolved into the wind, leaving the Canyonlands cliffs standing towering like silent witnesses, recording the footprints of 4 people, 3 who entered the desert to explore, and 1 who entered it for an entirely different purpose. As the sun crested over the red cliffs of Canyonlands, the ranger team continued expanding the search in the direction the strange footprints led. The sky shifted to pale orange, making the veins in the sandstone layers stand out sharply, as if the entire landscape was revealing secrets buried under time and darkness. The team leader decided to deploy the drone once more, this time scanning vertically and along the rock fissures that humans could barely access. Just minutes after the drone took off and skimmed along the sheer rock wall, one of the operators spotted something unusual. On the control screen, tucked into a narrow rock alcove offset to the right of the main trail, was an area of soil stretched into a faint streak. The size was just right for a human body. It was not a wash from rainwater, not a mark from wildlife. This was a true drag mark. The operator zoomed in closer. The measured length was about 4 feet. The drag mark started from a small ledge and led into the alcove. There were no clear footprints around it, a sign that someone had deliberately obscured them, or the mark was created by exploiting the slick rock surface to minimize evidence. The drone shifted angle. Sunlight created shadows that made it clearer. The drag mark was not just a single long line, it also had compressed patches, like knees of someone being dragged scraping along. The ranger team immediately moved to the location the drone had flagged. The path to the alcove was anything but easy. Steep surface, loose rocks rolling underfoot, and height requiring careful steps. When they arrived, one ranger crouched down and lightly touched the darker soil compared to the rest. He shone a UV light over it. A faint fluorescent layer appeared, evidence of blood. The whole team stood still for a few seconds, not from surprise, but because they had mentally prepared for this the moment they saw the drag mark. But seeing blood evidence right at the scene made everything heavier. Under normal light, the blood color was hard to spot, because the red sandstone soil masked most of the pigment, but under UV, it was a patchy fluorescent strip running along the drag mark. An expert collected soil samples, sealed them, and labeled them. "We need further analysis, but it's highly likely this is human blood," he said, voice cautious, but unable to hide the gravity. Right next to the drag mark, there were tiny black ash particles scattered on the rock. Marcus, wearing gloves, picked up a few small pieces. The ash still held faint warmth, not hot, but warm enough to tell it hadn't been there long. One ranger touched the ash layer at the rock edge with a fingertip and flinched at the lingering heat beneath the thin soil cover. They exchanged glances. This ash was produced only a few hours ago at most, Marcus assessed. Someone built a fire here recently and tried to extinguish it quickly. The alcove was not large, only about 40 square feet, but enclosed enough to block wind and hide firelight from being seen at a distance. An ideal spot to stop, wait, watch, or control someone. As they examined closer, the soil inside the alcove showed depressions in 2 places, One deep and wide, like where a person was pinned down or held tightly. The other smaller but sharp, like the print of boots standing in control. One ranger pointed to a faint dark smear on the rock wall. Looks like it was rubbed here. Could be the arm or shoulder of the person dragged. Small horizontal scratches on the rock face, at about waist height, further proved someone had impacted hard while being pulled. Rhodes walked around the alcove, eyes scanning slowly but focused as if reading a hidden map. He spoke quietly but loud enough for everyone to hear. This isn't a spot victims accidentally fell into. This is a control point. He pointed to the drag mark. Pulled in here. Then to the ash streak. Stopped here. Waited a while. Then he looked toward the alcove entrance, and observed from there. The traces, arranged logically, made the whole scene clear. A 4-foot drag mark showing the person was pulled while unable to move themselves. Still warm fire ash proving the perpetrator was here just hours earlier. No chaotic victim footprints in the alcove, they were completely controlled. No dropped items left behind the perpetrator deliberately cleaned up to conceal. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood this alcove was not a place the three young friends sought out on their own. No one chooses to shelter in an alcove when still close to the main trail. No one builds a fire in such a secluded spot without leaving any other items. And no one voluntarily leaves a drag mark over 3 feet long while looking for a rest spot. One ranger gently pushed aside sand in a corner of the alcove and uncovered a few larger ash fragments, signs that something had been incompletely burned. But the ash was too fragmented to identify what it was on site. Marcus stood up, lightly brushing off his gloves. "This is the first contact point," he said. "Not a hypothesis, not speculation, but a conclusion based on all the traces. All the evidence together formed one simple but terrifying truth. An act of control had taken place here. Someone had been dragged into the alcove, and the perpetrator had left just before the ranger team arrived, with only hours in between." Canyonlands, vast and empty as it was, no longer felt like harmless wilderness. It had become a place marked by a concealed truth, a truth that could only be uncovered through each drag mark, each warm ash particle, and each footprint someone had tried but failed to erase. After finishing documenting every detail in the alcove, the ranger team expanded the search beyond the drag mark area, this time focusing on following the direction the perpetrator moved after the initial control. Morning sunlight slanted through the cliffs, casting long shadow strips that helped them spot small compressions on the surface they had missed the night before. Just a few meters outside the alcove, the footprint pattern changed dramatically, and that was when the whole team realized what they had found earlier was only the tip of the iceberg. From the end of the drag mark, the footprints began splitting into 3 different directions, like sudden branches appearing on the sand and rock. One ranger knelt down, using a ruler to measure and record each direction. The first direction veered to the right, very shallow, with no deep prints of someone actively running. The second went straight down a steeper slope, heavy and uneven prints. The third turned left, with interrupted sections covered by rocks, but still recognizable thanks to a light parallel drag streak next to the footprints. Rhodes frowned. 3 branching directions, 3 people separated. The tracking experts began following each branch one by one. The first branch, with light prints, showed small compressions from someone walking weakly or forced to move quickly, but without resistance. This was likely Lily, based on print size. The stride showed no staggering, but the step length was shorter than on the initial trail section. Closely escorted, one expert assessed, not free, but not dragged either. The second branch showed a clear difference, heavy, deep prints with uneven weight distribution. At some points, the prints dug into the soil, as if the person was lunging forward or being shoved hard. The shoe pattern matched Mason, wider, heavier. There were sections where the person behind was pulling, because the ground behind was lightly churned in a fan shape, the kind of mark commonly seen when someone resists a push or pull. The third branch made the team pause longer. Cole's footprints appeared here, but not continuously. There were long stretches with no prints from him, replaced instead by shallow, straight, even scrape marks. Someone was carried. Marcus concluded, He pointed to the long scrape similar to a boot sole or fabric dragged over rock. Cole wasn't moving on his feet here. Someone lifted him or shoulder carried him. Roads marked the 3 directions, circling them with specialized paint. 3 people going 3 different ways, at the same time. Not something one perpetrator could do. A young ranger interjected, unless Rhodes cut him off. No, one person dragging 3 victims in 3 directions at once is impossible. He pointed to the perpetrator's footprints, plus the strange shoe prints appear in at least 2 of the branches, not one. The tracking experts continued analyzing the force patterns in each step. Along Mason's branch, the strange prints appeared right behind him, always close, less than half a stride away, the exact style of someone forcing the victim to go the desired way. Meanwhile, on Lily's branch, the strange boot prints were offset to the left, as if the person was walking beside while controlling from the side. But the most striking part was on Cole's branch. The strange boot prints here were completely different from the pair following Mason and Lily. Elena pointed to the tread groove shape. This is a second boot, completely different tread pattern, not the same person. Marcus examined closely, then nodded. 2 people, 2 different pairs of boots, 2 different weights. He quickly noted, first pair military style, horizontal grooves, large size, second pair, medium size work boot style, heavily worn heel, both appear in control patterns, not random. A ranger standing nearby looked at all 3 branching directions converging at the same point, and said quietly, they weren't separated, because they got lost. They were separated, because someone wanted them separated. This reasoning became even clearer when the tracking team cross-referenced the footprint patterns. If the young group had split up on their own to find a way out, at least one would have run back uphill or left hurried signs. But here, all the prints told the same story. They were led away according to someone else's will, each in a separately controlled direction. In treacherous terrain like Canyonlands, separating a group is a dangerous but effective tactic, if the goal is to prevent victims from helping each other. Even more frightening, the terrain in the area offered no suggested routes. There were no natural escape paths in 3 different directions. That meant the perpetrators knew this place like the back of their hand. When the tracking team collected all the data, Marcus summarized the conclusion on site. We have at least 2 perpetrators, both with clear tactics. They split the 3 to make control easier. Rhodes added, and they did this calmly. No signs of rushing. Elena looked one last time at the drag mark on Cole's branch, and wrote in her notebook, 1 person carried, 2 forced to walk. The rangers looked at the 3 branches, stretching into the vast desert. Each branch was a different path, each path a story torn apart from the others. But despite the separation, they all led to one single truth: the 3 were no longer together from that moment on. And they did not take different paths because they wanted to find a way out. They were deliberately separated by people who knew exactly what they were doing in this land. Once the traces confirmed that the 3 people had been separated and led in 3 different directions, the investigation team shifted to analyzing each individual's survival probability under wilderness survival standards. Federal survival experts were called in, bringing detailed topographic maps, temperature, humidity, wind speed data, and human endurance simulation models in extreme conditions. They set up an analysis station right next to the high rock slab, where the traces split into 3 directions. From here, all collected data would be linked to answer the question: if the 3 were forced to keep moving after the initial control, how far could they have gone? Canyonlands weather conditions were placed on the analysis table first. Daytime temperatures could reach 108 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to soften rubber soles on the burning rock surfaces. Nighttime dropped to 46 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to cause muscle stiffness in dehydrated or exhausted people. Average humidity was nearly 0, causing the body to lose water twice as fast as in normal dry heat. One expert opened the file and quickly read the data. Under these temperature conditions, a person carrying enough water could still only cover an average of 10 to a maximum of 14 miles in the first 72 hours. That's assuming they were moving freely, but the initial analysis quickly clashed with the on-site reality. As the tracking teams followed the three branches, they calculated the total distance from the separation point to the last locations where traces were found. Mason went the farthest, Lily less, and Cole covered the shortest distance, because most of the time there were signs he was carried or dragged. When adding up the total distance, Mason had been led before the traces completely disappeared. The number exceeded 20 miles. Similarly, Lily's footprints also surpassed the limit a normal person could cover in a short time without water supply. Marcus reviewed the footprint records a second time. "There's no way they walked these distances on their own," he said. Rhodes nodded. "Exactly. And this was after the initial attack." A survival expert held the topographic map and pointed to sections with steep slopes and slick rock surfaces, so smooth they gleamed like glass. "Crossing this without water, you'd lose strength in just a few hours," he said. And here, he pointed to the slick rock path the tracking team had marked. Whoever led them had to know which canyons were easier to cross, knew every rare shaded spot to avoid collapse. The trackers continued their analysis. The perpetrators' footprints were always steady, with no fluctuations of fatigue. The stride pattern showed the perpetrators were leading, not being pulled along. This was not the random or panicked movement that lost hikers typically display. This was the behavior of people thoroughly familiar with the terrain, with endurance, and who had chosen specific routes in advance. One investigator pointed to the map. They were forced to take roundabout paths, not the shortest ones. Marcus re-examined the route. Mason was led along. The perpetrator took Mason down a deep canyon, then looped south, traveling parallel to the cliff walls for hours, then forced him to turn back west. "No logic if trying to find a way out," Marcus said, "but very logical if he wanted to take Mason to a place he had prepared." Elena compiled the notes. If the perpetrators only wanted to abandon them in the desert, they wouldn't have gone to the trouble of separating the group and leading them this far. No need to go 20 miles. She pointed out other signs. No footprints showing the victims were allowed to rest. Not a single trace of stopping to drink water or recover. All the tracks indicate they were forced to keep moving continuously. In ordinary missing persons cases, whether from getting lost or exhaustion, a person would leave signs of seeking shade, sitting to rest, or circling back toward water sources. But in all three branches, there were no natural stopping points. Lily's prints were even but abnormal. No skipped steps from someone weakening. Mason had signs of brief resistance, but afterward, his steps became unnaturally regular, as if forced to match the pace of the person leading him. A survival expert explained, "When coerced, the body doesn't move at its natural pace. This creates straight strained strides with more force on the front than the back." He pointed to Mason's steps. "That's the stride of someone being pushed forward." The analysis of Cole's traces was even clearer. Since Cole spent time being carried, the parallel scrape marks alongside the perpetrator's boot prints formed a distinct pattern. These scrape marks were long and continuous, as if the perpetrator had prepared a method to transport the victim without slowing down. One ranger remarked, "This isn't impulsive behavior, they're used to moving with victims." The deeper the analysis went, the clearer one thing became to the investigation team. Distances over 20 miles could not be explained by panic, could not be explained by the three fleeing or searching for a way out. These were distances covered while being led by people with a plan. The perpetrators knew human limits, knew the rare shaded spots, the wind-sheltered crevices, and the places suitable for taking victims without being detected. They weren't looking for a way out. They were taking them to a specific destination. One investigator delivered the final conclusion during the on-site meeting. No one could walk over 20 miles in these conditions without being given water or rest. The footprints show no rest at all. That means, the perpetrators had prepared a place to keep them. The whole team fell silent for a few seconds, looking at the three branches of tracks stretching into the sun-scorched desert. Everyone understood that these traces didn't just show the victims were led away, they also showed that the people leading them had a specific purpose, a clear plan, and complete control over the advantages of this vast wilderness. After the survival experts confirmed that the three young friends were forced to move far beyond natural limits, the investigation team continued pushing deeper into the three branches to find additional traces. But as they entered the second week, Canyonlands terrain began exposing its most dangerous feature, slick rock. Slick rock is a type of sandstone smooth as glass, holding no footprints whatsoever. Once someone steps onto it, all traces vanish, as if they never existed. That was also where the traces of Mason, Lily and Cole, along with the traces of the two perpetrators, abruptly ended. Rhodes was the first to notice this change. As he reached the edge of a wide slick rock expanse, he saw Mason's trail stop neatly right at the rock edge, with no signs of a strong leap or long skid, indicating a jump down or fall. It simply disappeared. Elena examined every crack on the slick rock up close with a UV light. There was nothing but the smooth, shiny rock surface reflecting sunlight like a natural mirror. They stepped onto the slick rock, she said quietly. Then nothing. Marcus looked out across the expanse stretching over 100 meters. Trace evasion technique, he concluded. He deliberately led the whole group here to cut off all footprints. This is a technique used only by experienced manhunters, people living off-grid in the wilderness, or fugitives highly skilled at evasion. They choose ground that holds no prints, lead victims across it for a distance, then change direction, leaving search teams in a natural maze with no clues at all. Not just Mason's path, the branches for Lily and Cole also led to separate slick rock areas. All three paths suddenly went silent as if someone had extinguished every sign of presence in just a few steps. Rhodes scanned the overview. He did this on purpose, he said. Not random that all three directions end on slick rock. The team leader nodded. They wanted us to lose the trail, but slick rock was not the only thing drawing the investigation team's attention. While checking the slick rock edges, a distance from Mason's path, Marcus discovered an area of rock, cleared unusually clean. The surface was flat, with no dust, dry leaves or natural debris that wind usually blows in. It was suspiciously clean, too clean to be natural. He knelt down and lightly brushed the rock surface with his hand. Someone used something to sweep this area, he said, then offered a hypothesis, maybe clothing, or a large branch. Rhodes flipped over a small rock, and noticed a few red dust particles stuck to the underside. Turned over recently, he said. He cleared rocks to hide footprints or hide something. There were no human footprints in that area, but that only further proved it had been carefully processed. When the investigation team used soft brushes to sweep the surface, they only recovered a few faint scratches, possibly from boot edges or a hard object, but nothing specific. A young ranger said, "It's like someone erased the entire scene." No one wanted to say it, but in everyone's mind, this possibility grew clearer. The perpetrator not only knew how to hide traces, but also how to wipe away any remaining ones, showing deep knowledge of evasion techniques. However, the discovery that followed made the atmosphere even heavier. While checking a wider slick rock section where sunlight hit directly and shadows were sharpest, Marcus noticed very thin dust streaks in an area that seemed empty. He sat down, squinting to analyze wind direction and dust settling on the rock surface. "Right here," he said, pointing to a nearly invisible small spot. "Someone stood here." Elena moved closer. "Barefoot, boots, or something else?" Marcus shook his head. "Not a footprint. This is dust compressed in a very small area, just one single point, like the tip of a staff." The team leader stepped over, listening silently, as Marcus continued analyzing. This person used a trekking pole or walking staff for balance, while standing long on slick rock. People experienced in desert living or on smooth rock terrain do that to reduce slipping. That explained why there were no boot prints, yet the surface still had one very lightly compressed dust point. "Look at the wind direction," Marcus continued. He was standing facing back toward us. Rhodes stood up abruptly. "This guy came back to watch us." No one spoke for a few seconds. Light wind carried red dust across the rock surface, but the silence between the tall cliffs made it feel like someone was standing somewhere far off, watching them back just as Marcus described. "How long ago?" one ranger asked. Marcus considered, observing the thickness of dust that had already settled over the compressed point. "No more than 24 hours. That meant while the search team was following each victim trace, the perpetrator had stood somewhere on this slick rock expanse, watching them from afar, even possibly observing the entire operation throughout the previous day. This caused the team leader to completely change the approach. He ordered expanding the security perimeter and requested high ground observation because the person could be moving through surrounding cliffs. No one viewed this as an ordinary victim search anymore. Now they had to consider that they themselves might be under surveillance. In the second week, as all three directions led into smooth slick rock areas and traces were completely erased, the investigation team clearly understood they were facing not just someone who knew this land, but someone actively using the land as a shield. This person did not just abduct three young friends. He knew every strength and weakness of the canyon, knew where footprints disappear, knew where he could observe pursuers without being detected, and the small remaining dust streaks on the slick rock were the only evidence proving the perpetrator had not fled. He was still around here, continuously monitoring every advance of the ranger team. When the second week report was sent back to headquarters, Team Leader Rhodes's concluding line forced the entire National Park Service and federal rescue forces to immediately reopen the file at a higher level. Traces deliberately erased. Perpetrator returned to monitor the search team. This is no longer a standard missing persons case. The very next morning, the case was reclassified as suspicious disappearance, a level that allowed transfer of the investigation to the FBI and expansion of jurisdiction beyond Canyonlands boundaries. The arrival of the FBI completely changed the atmosphere at the Incident Command Post. Communication antenna vehicles, trace analysis equipment, and the HRT hostage rescue team behavioral experts were dispatched from Salt Lake City. The FBI special agent in charge of non-urban cases, Special Agent Rourke, received a direct briefing from Rhodes. Rhodes summarized briefly, "The perpetrator doesn't just know the terrain. He came back to watch us." The trace erasure on Slick Rock was very precise, very professional. Rourke activated the electronic board, displaying Canyonlands maps over the years. "You're not the only team to encounter this kind of disappearing trace pattern." He zoomed in on 6 small points scattered around the Needles District and Maze District. Those were 6 disappearances over the past 9 years, all of which had never been found. A 34-year-old man vanished while trail running. 2 German tourists lost trace just 2 hours after leaving the Elephant Hill parking lot. A couple from Reno lost contact during a backpacking trip, with only an empty tent found. 2 college students from Denver disappeared in the Maze area, where there's almost no signal and the highest level of wilderness. All had been classified as lost hikers due to navigation error, people lost due to directional mistake. But when Rourke overlaid the FBI's special data layer, trajectory mapping, everything changed immediately. All 6 missing routes stopped in the exact pattern the Rhodes team had just encountered, traces clear until leading onto a wide slick rock expanse. Traces completely vanishing after touching slick rock areas all having sections cleared as if someone erased signs of struggle, and in 3 cases, investigators reported feeling watched from afar, but couldn't locate hiding spots. Rourke circled 2 overlapping points across cases. "Do you see it? 8 years ago, 3 German hikers disappeared the same way, traces leading onto slick rock, then nothing." Topographic maps show the disappearance points are all near vantage points that could observe search teams. Marcus, standing next to Rhodes, frowned. "You mean someone has done this multiple times?" Rourke replied briefly, "Not one person, 2. The FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit (BAU) explained that the attack motif of separating the group, signs of both forced walking and carrying, and coordination between 2 different movement routes, indicated a pair of perpetrators. Not robbers, not recreational hunters. This was the pattern of a hunter pair, a rare but real type in U.S. criminal history. They also pointed out 3 factors, matching perfectly between the old cases and the Mason, Lily, Cole case. 1. Perpetrators stalked victims from afar before acting based on footprint data and timing analysis. The perpetrators spent time observing, choosing the exact moment victims entered narrow canyon sections where turning back was impossible. 2. Attack involving group separation. The 6 old cases all had victim belongings found in 3 different locations, indicating separation behavior right after control, a motif of those wanting to eliminate resistance spirit. 3. Footprints disappearing at the exact same spot, not from wind or natural causes, but perpetrators leading victims onto slick rock, terrain that holds no prints, then changing direction or separating further. This explained why each disappearance quickly hit a dead end and became a cold case. Systematic evidence, connected for the first time, and FBI analysts specializing in movement patterns discovered that in all 6 cases, victims showed no voluntary direction change. There were signs of sudden stop footprints, similar to Mason, Lily, Cole. There were cleared rock areas, meaning a group capable of fast movement, thorough terrain knowledge, and professional trace erasure. Marcus looked at the map, voice lowering. If there really are 2 people doing this, they must know Canyonlands like their own home. Rourke replied, not just know, this is their hunting ground. FBI official hypothesis, desert hunter pair, with overlapping data from 7 cases, 6 old and the Mason, Lily, Cole case. The FBI built an initial profile, pair of perpetrators likely living off-grid in the desert area. Pattern of approach, attack, group separation, trace erasure, timing of actions coinciding with the harshest weather months, when traces degrade fastest, high likelihood of locals or people formerly living deep in the desert region. No one on the team still thought this was just a kidnapping or victims getting lost. The data was too clear. We're no longer searching for missing people, Rourke concluded. We're hunting a pair of desert hunters active for years. The FBI involvement initially created a feeling that everything would speed up, answers would come, at least one reliable clue would emerge. But just weeks later, Canyonlands began proving why it's considered one of the hardest wilderness areas in the United States to trace evidence. All efforts, from rangers, FBI, BAU, to federal tracking experts, gradually fell into a state no one wanted to admit: absolute silence. From the first month, search radius expanded dozens of miles from the disappearance point. Every slick rock area, every narrow valley, every broken ledge was searched dozens of times. Thermal drones flew all night. Spectrometers scanned every discolored soil streak. Ground-penetrating radar was dragged through areas capable of hiding objects. But everything led to one conclusion: nothing new, no additional footprints, no dropped belongings, no drag marks, no blood, no digging signs. 3 people, Mason Hale, Lily Navarro, Cole Barrett, along with every sign of their presence, as if dissolved in the same afternoon amid the red desert. Months 2 through 3, every direction a stone wall. The FBI screened every record related to people formerly living reclusively around the edges of Moab, Monticello, but all 32 names on the list were gradually eliminated. Some had left the state long ago, several had clear alibis, a few had died years earlier. The rest lacked the mobility deep into core Canyonlands, as traces indicated. Every interview yielded the same result: no one matching behavior pattern, movement pattern, or erasure technique. Federal tracking teams also concluded the slick rock erasure could not be natural. But when they tried to determine next movement direction, everything stopped at the same point. Glass-smooth rock, no dragged soil, no newly slid boulders, no fabric fibers, no plastic fragments, no sign helping infer direction. The atmosphere in the temporary command room grew so heavy that even the sound of a closing door felt sharp. Maps full of pinned markers and red circles remained unchanged for weeks. Months 4 through 5, the desert returns its silence. Weather turned harsher sun. Ground temperatures rose to levels, forcing drones to reduce flight frequency due to heat overload. Search teams rotated personnel. 1 month, then 2, then 3, nothing appeared. Survival probability experts said that in Canyonlands conditions, anyone missing over 14 days without water sources was unlikely to still be alive. But even in fatal accident cases, Canyonlands still left traces: bones dragged up by strong wind cycles, clothing caught in thorn bushes, metal items reflecting sunlight, decomposition odor attracting animals, and search dogs. But the Mason Lily Cole case had none of that. No bodies, no fabric scraps, no decomposition signs, no anomalies in any search sweep. In the 5th-month report, there was exactly one line that gave anyone reading it chills down their spine: no evidence they remained in Canyonlands after the disappearance time. But also no evidence they left Canyonlands. Months 6 through 8, as news gradually cooled, media stopped covering, and the investigation team scaled down, Canyonlands remained silent. But that silence started causing local residents to whisper rumors. In Moab, a guide said he once saw flashlight beams sweeping across rock faces. At times no one was allowed to trek. In Monticello, someone reported hearing long whistles from a canyon crevice. In Bluff, several hiking groups said they felt someone standing high above watching them while passing a deep cliff. The stories spread without evidence, but shared one common point: descriptions of a figure no one clearly saw, only knowing he always stood in positions ordinary people could hardly reach. Local press began using the phrase, "the invisible one of Canyonlands." Travel forums mentioned the case with cautionary tones. Some residents even avoided entering Core Needles District and Maze District after sunset. No investigator believed in ghosts, but everyone acknowledged one fact: Canyonlands is vast enough to hide one person or more, for years without anyone knowing. Months 9 through 12, the file falls into legal silence. When fall returned, colder air, stronger winds, rangers and FBI only conducted periodic sweeps. No new technology, no new evidence. All analysis had been exhausted to its limit. One morning briefing at the end of the 12th month lasted exactly 3 minutes. All reports recorded the same result: no new findings. When the file re-evaluation time arrived, the specialist groups, investigation, technical, forensic tracking, BAU, were all forced to agree that no clear suspects, no basis for arrest warrants, no data to expand investigation out of state, no physical evidence left to analyze. Per federal procedure, the file was marked cold case and transferred to temporary storage in Salt Lake City, like many other unsolved disappearances. Rhodes signed the transfer sheet with one short note: no progress, no evidence, no traces. That afternoon, as the team packed up equipment from Canyonlands, hot wind blew through the red rock ribbons, exactly like the afternoon Mason, Lily and Cole vanished. All that remained were rolled-up maps, removed marker strings, and a vast emptiness where every trace had once appeared, then also disappeared. Canyonlands returned to its former state, vast, empty, and absolutely silent, as if no one had ever disappeared here. 1 full year after the file on Mason, Lily and Cole was shelved in the cold case drawer, Canyonlands still held its heavy silence. No more search teams camped out, no more helicopters circling, no more federally mobilized drones. Only scorching rock trails, canyons deep as ancient wells, and desert wind cutting into skin. That morning, a regular June morning like any other, 2 hikers from Salt Lake City were following a remote route leading up to the Orange Cliffs, an area rarely visited. This trail was usually only for experienced people because of the broken terrain, steep rock, and many sections where the path disappeared. They planned a short loop and to head back before the heat became unbearable. When they reached a low rock ledge, the one in front suddenly stopped. About 30 meters away, beneath a small patch of shade between 2 sheer cliff walls, something was moving very slowly. At first they thought it was an injured coyote, but as they got closer, they realized it was a person. A woman, hair matted into clumps, skin burned dark and cracked in many places, crawling on her elbows as if she no longer had strength to lift her body. The clothes on her were shredded, fabric stuck tight to skin from sweat, red dust and dried blood. When she heard footsteps, she tried to lift her head, but only managed a few inches before collapsing onto the rock. She whispered something very faint, barely a sound. The hikers had to lean in close to make out the raspy voice from long-term dehydration.
"Help! Me!"
They touched her shoulder and jerked their hands back. Her body was unnaturally cold, yet burning hot in blistered areas. Many marks on her skin were not from sun or falls, they were in the shape of binding loops. There were patches of skin peeled away in long straight lines, like rope friction burns. One rib protruded under the skin, showing impact injury, possibly from rock, kicking or hard collision. On her left arm was a shallow circular burn, even as if touched by hot metal. They called 911 on a satellite phone. The nearest ranger took over 40 minutes to arrive. With a body that exhausted, 40 minutes felt like an impossible ordeal. While waiting, she tried to say something. Breathing ragged, eyes glazed as if seeing only shapeless white light, one of the hikers tried to calm her and asked, "What's your name? Can you hear me?" The woman trembled, cracked lips bleeding. She tried to form each word, as if pulling them from somewhere very deep and very dark in her memory. Lily. Both hikers looked at each other in shock. That name, one they had read on a faded poster at the ranger station a full year ago. Lily Navarro, the one who vanished with Mason Hale and Cole Barrett. One of them fumbled with the phone, pulled up the photo from the poster, compared it to the gaunt, sunburned face that was almost unrecognizable. Features nearly deformed, but the forehead, cheekbones and small mole next to the right eye still matched. "No way," the second hiker whispered. "She's alive." When the ranger arrived, Lily was nearly unconscious. She was only alert enough to react when the ranger brought water to her lips. But when asked what happened, her eyes opened wider, jerking as if a horrifying image had flooded back. She uttered one broken sentence, more a panicked reflex than an intentional answer. "Not one person." The ranger paused. "What do you mean?" Lily tried to swallow dryly, throat so parched, there was no sound. Tears flowed without it being clear, if from pain or fear. She repeated, this time clearer, though her voice still shook. "Two people, they hunt people." Right after that sentence, Lily's body twitched lightly, then slipped into a semi-comatose state. Initial examination, the injuries spoke volumes. At the temporary medical station in Hands Flat Ranger Station, federal investigators returned immediately. The emergency medical check showed Lily's body had endured severe dehydration, lasting many days, signs of long-term malnutrition, multiple shallow burns in uniform shapes, not accidental, old binding scars healed over on wrists and ankles, cracked ribs, at least 2 places damaged by strong force, a long cut on the right upper arm mildly infected, bruising in various stages, proving not just a few days of abuse, but over an extended period. These did not match any kind of lost hiker accident, did not match falls on terrain, did not match self-inflicted injury. They matched exactly the wounds of someone held captive, controlled, forcibly moved, and systematically abused. When the doctor asked if she remembered anything, Lily could only shake her head. Neurological psychological trauma had fragmented her memory. Answers scattered, broken. But one thing kept repeating in her halting words, not one person, 2 people, they watch, they hunt. No names mentioned, no clear location, no specific description, only 2 ideas, 2 people, and hunting people. The biggest surprise, Lily appeared where no one was searching. What shocked the FBI was not just that Lily was alive, something no one dared hope for after a year missing, but the location where she was found, Orange Cliffs. That was not where they disappeared, not in any search sweep, not in the forensic suspect area. No footprints leading there in last year's search, no trace the 3 had ever passed through this zone. This raised a series of forensic questions. Who brought Lily there? Why bring her to a treacherous place she could barely escape on her own? Where was she held before being released or escaping? Why no drag marks or temporary medical care traces? Why signs of long-term captivity, but no fatal injuries? The Orange Cliffs area was far too distant from the original location for a healthy person to walk from the disappearance point to where she was found. Would take many continuous days, with full water and food, but Lily in that condition could not have walked there herself. Every investigator understood that. Fragmented statement, they wait, they watch. After IV fluids and some recovery, Lily could speak more clearly, though still very weak, and with disrupted memory. The sentences she uttered were all fear reflexes. They watch from high up, no need to step close. At night, no footsteps, but breathing sounds. They don't argue, they coordinate. Not an accident, not lost. They chose us. When the doctor asked who, Lily only squeezed her eyes shut, tears running down both temples, and repeated, 2 people, 2 people, 2 people. Each time she said it, her voice seemed to lose more breath than her body could spare. No one pressed her for more. Her condition was too fragile for questioning. The doctor reported she needed recovery time before giving a full statement, but the investigation team understood one thing clearly: Lily's appearance was not the end of the case. It was the first living evidence, after a year of total silence, evidence proving this disappearance was not a navigation error, but something far darker still hiding in Canyonlands. At noon on the day Lily was brought back from Orange Cliffs, all the shredded clothing stuck to her body was carefully removed in a sealed room at Hans Flat Ranger Station, then immediately flown by helicopter to the FBI lab in Salt Lake City. This was the first time in a year there was real-time physical evidence related to the case, evidence carried by the living victim herself. No one on the investigation team expected much. After a year outdoors, under harsh sun, wind-blown sand, and countless natural elements, they assumed every trace would be wiped clean. Even the fabric samples could be cross-contaminated by hundreds of other factors. But just 72 hours after initial analysis, the lab sent back a report that forced the entire investigation team to change their attitude immediately. Because what was found on Lily's clothing did not fit any scenario that had been proposed over the past year. Nylon rope traces, specialized, not typical hiking gear. Lily's clothing showed 3 typical damage patterns: shallow horizontal cuts in straight lines, even circular binding marks around wrists and ankles, long friction streaks as if dragged while bound. Fiber analysis showed this was not cotton rope, not cheap paracord, and certainly not mountain rescue cord. Microscopy results revealed high-strength braided nylon, commonly used in military operations, long-term camping, or professional hunting. The nylon fibers left 3 types of marks: small cuts from metal, deep friction from prolonged tension, tiny fiber separations from being bound too long. One forensic technician stated directly in the report, "These marks are not signs of an accident. These are signs of captivity." This reinforced everything Lily said in her semi-comatose state, that there were 2 people, and they hunt people. But what truly shocked the investigation team was not the nylon. Mason's DNA, and DNA from an unknown male fabric scraps around Lily's wrists, shirt hem, and shoulder edge, contained enough skin cells and sweat for identity analysis. Sample 1, Mason Hale's DNA profile, matched 99.97% with samples from personal items collected a year earlier. This was not surprising. It supported the theory that Lily had been close to Mason during the initial captivity phase. Possibly Mason was bound with her, or tried to help her escape, or was forced to move together. Sample 2, DNA from an unidentified male profile, did not match anyone in the CODIS system, nor samples from search team members or people who contacted her after discovery. Did not match any tourists from prior disappearances. Did not match any local residents previously suspected. Did not match any violent offenders within a 200-mile radius. The tube containing this DNA was labeled Profile X1. One FBI analyst wrote, "X1 DNA repeats in patterns of direct contact, but no identification in any national database. Highly likely, this is an individual living off the grid." X1 was immediately flagged as a suspect directly involved in the abduction or transport of victims. Wingate sandstone soil particles, not from where Lily was found. The most critical finding came from something seemingly worthless: dirt stuck to the inside fabric and seams. Compared to the common red soil in Canyonlands, the lab discovered distinctive yellow quartz crystals, clay with larger grain structure, small mica fragments, and extremely high ratio of fine Wingate sandstone. Wingate sandstone only appears in certain areas, mostly deep southern Maze District, dozens of miles from Orange Cliffs. This meant Lily was not held at Orange Cliffs. She was held at a completely different location with Wingate sandstone soil. Then she walked many days, weeks or months to reach Orange Cliffs. Wingate sandstone does not naturally occur at the spot she was found, could not be blown there by wind, could not contaminate from rescuers. The soil on her clothing stated clearly, Lily had been in an entirely different place before appearing at Orange Cliffs. Initial forensic conclusion, Lily escaped, she was not released. When combining the three major findings, high-strength nylon binding marks, Mason's DNA plus unknown male DNA, Wingate sandstone soil from an area not near where she was found, forensics proposed three possibilities. 1. Lily was held in a structure or area on Wingate sandstone bedrock, most likely a rock alcove, natural cave, or illegal camp. 2. She moved away from the captivity site on her own power, because there were no signs of being carried or dragged in the final segment. 3. The wandering period was long enough to cause total exhaustion, with many old wounds healed over while newer ones still bled. No evidence she was released by anyone. No signs of prior medical aid. No signs of motorized transport. Everything pointed to one single possibility. Lily escaped the captivity site herself, and she walked very long, very far before collapsing at Orange Cliffs. One big question: so where are Mason and Cole? The forensic results could not answer this. But Mason's DNA on Lily's clothing showed they were close together during one phase. It does not rule out they were also held in the same Wingate sandstone area, and the group separation happened many days after initial capture. Though forensics could not yet determine their fate, the data said one important thing: Lily did not disappear at Orange Cliffs. She only appeared there. The place she was held is somewhere entirely different. After 3 days of continuous recovery at the hospital in Moab, Lily was still weak, but doctors said she was alert enough to give her first official statement. Not an interrogation, not pressure, just a safe space for her fragmented memories to be pieced together, little by little. Ranger Rhodes, FBI Special Agent Rourke, and a BAU forensic psychologist were present. Lily could not yet sit upright, needing to lean against 2 layers of pillows, breathing still labored. But her eyes were completely different from the moment she was found at Orange Cliffs. Less panicked, but holding none of the cheerful, lively architecture student she once was. She began with a sentence almost whispered: "They weren't random, they choose people." The male perpetrator, muscular, silent, and disciplined in action. When asked about the man, Lily closed her eyes, tried to visualize, then said he was tall, very tall, muscular. Not gym-built, like someone who has done heavy manual labor for years. The investigator asked how he moved. Lily said, "No noise, even on rock, on gravel, on sand. No sound." This immediately matched prior forensic traces: footprints completely erased, standing points with no weight shift marks, and sophisticated trace evasion techniques. She continued, "He didn't speak, never spoke, only hand signals. Using hand signals without words is a trait of someone with training, possibly military, or group skills honed in harsh environments." Lily shivered slightly, recalling the man's eyes. "Once I looked up and saw him standing on a rock ledge looking down. No blinking, no reaction. Like he was watching us, not as people, but observing prey." The word prey made the BAU take immediate note. The female perpetrator, even less verbal, but with uncontrolled violence. When asked about the woman, Lily reacted differently. Her face tensed, hands gripping the bedsheet tightly. She was smaller, thin, but Lily drew a sharp breath, as if swallowing old fear. "More violent than anyone I've ever seen." The investigator asked, "Did she say anything to you?" Lily shook her head. "No," like she didn't know how to speak, or didn't need to. But when she came close, everything always got worse. According to Lily, the woman did not have the smooth movement of the man, but possessed unrestrained cruelty. She said, "When Mason tried to shield me while they were separating us, she kicked him in the back with force so hard I heard the crack." Hospital results confirmed Lily had cracked ribs. Mason likely suffered similar injury. Lily continued, "She liked it when someone was afraid. I saw the way her eyes changed, like she enjoyed other people's pain." The BAU flagged this behavior as uncontrolled violence, triggered by stimulation, in contrast to the male perpetrator's cold calculation. They operated as a pair, different roles but absolute coordination. When asked how the two perpetrators coordinated, Lily described details that silenced the entire room. He went first, always the one leading the way. She went behind, checking if we fell back or resisted. This matched forensic traces exactly. Two different footprint sets. One set with long, steady, consistent strides. One shorter set, but with uneven force distribution, fitting someone prone to violence. Lily continued, when they wanted us to move faster, she hit. When we went too fast, he pulled back. Rhodes asked, did the two ever disagree? Lily shook her head immediately, without thinking. No, never. They didn't argue, didn't talk. Each knew what to do, as if they had repeated it hundreds of times. This was recorded in the report as a key factor, structured group behavior, not a random pair, but a pair with tactics. They selected victims by speed and reaction. The faster one lives longer. One investigator asked, Lily, why did they take all three of you? Was it random? Lily startled, breathing quicker for a moment. She tried to piece memories together. They watched from afar. Before we knew they were there, they already knew who moved fastest, who was strongest. She recalled one moment on Syncline Loop, right before the attack. Mason always led. I was in the middle. Cole at the back. I think they chose based on that. They pressed for clarification. Chose how? Lily swallowed dryly, looking down at her thin hands. More slowly, she said, they watched who moved faster, who was stronger, who could run if released, who could make the chase last longer. The room went quiet for a few seconds. Rhodes continued, voice low and calm, and anyone who resisted. Lily closed her eyes, eyelashes trembling, was handled first. That was the phrase she used. Handled first. Not attacked, not killed, not beaten, but handled, as if the perpetrators had a rule, a sequence, a system for prioritizing targets. They categorized victims, starting with separation. Lily continued, voice soft and even as if trying not to break. Right after taking us, they separated us. Each led in a different direction, like they wanted to see who would run fastest, if given a chance, or who was weakest if pushed apart. This matched perfectly with early search forensics, traces splitting into three directions, one person carried, two forced to walk, every direction leading to Slick Rock, second stage trace erasure. Lily remembered one single moment, when all three were still in sight of each other. Mason shouted, don't separate, but he was hit hard on the head, and dragged away fastest. She saw nothing more after that moment. Repeated behavior, not the first time. One detail Lily mentioned, made the BAU immediately flag as critical. When they bound us, she tied the rope very fast, precisely, like she had done it many times before. Rourke turned to the forensic team, even circular binding marks, no deviation, no excess rope. All signs confirmed, this pair had done this before, many times. Conclusion of the first memory reconstruction session. When asked the final question, Lily, do you think they will stop? Lily looked straight at Rhodes, her eyes no longer panicked, but empty after a year in Canyonlands. She said slowly, word by word, they don't run. They aren't afraid of being found. They chose Canyonlands. They stay there, because that's where they hunt. Right after collecting Lily's full initial statement, the FBI investigation team and the Ranger Service tracking team immediately shifted focus to the area with Wingate sandstone geological composition, the only lead with clear geographic direction. This region stretches across the southern Maze District, an area notorious for being dangerous, rarely visited, and almost entirely without official trails. Based on the soil report clinging to Lily's clothing and seasonal wind data, experts narrowed the range to a series of cliffs about 40 miles from where she was found. These cliffs contain countless small alcoves, natural rock pockets, halfway up the walls, both concealed and difficult to spot from below. On the third day of the new sweep campaign, near sunset, a ranger named Hollis discovered an alcove showing signs of recent use. It was located about 13 feet above ground level, accessible only by edging along a narrow rock lip where a person had to lean fully into the wall to avoid falling. When flashlight beams shone inside, the entire group froze instantly. The alcove measured about 10 feet wide and 6 feet deep, exactly the size for a small group to hide without being visible from outside. The entire floor was smooth, Wingate sandstone, with its characteristic yellow-red hue, but what made everyone realize this was not an untouched natural pocket was the clear signs: worn skid marks on part of the stone floor, cut nylon rope segments discarded in the corner, strips of cloth used for gagging or binding, concentric binding marks in the accumulated dust layer. One investigator whispered very quietly, "This is where they were held." Binding marks and items, evidence of prolonged captivity. When the forensic team collected samples, they found 3 worn circular spots, corresponding to the points Lily described as where they were fixed in place, a piece of nylon rope with yellow clay adhering, matching the type that caused injuries on Lily's wrists. 2 cloth strips about 7 inches long, torn from being yanked hard, consistent with gagging behavior. Friction marks on the alcove floor, showing at least 2 people were dragged or forced to sit for extended periods. All were traces of structured captivity, not temporary. Footprints, matching the strange prints from the first day of disappearance, but the most critical evidence emerged when forensics scanned the floor under UV light. A series of very deep, unusually large boot prints, about 12 inches long and 5 inches wide, with serrated military-style tread. These footprints matched exactly the prints the investigation team had collected when analyzing the last seen area a year earlier. The angle, wear pattern, weight distribution, all identical. Those prints could only belong to the male perpetrator Lily described: tall, muscular, disciplined movement. The forensic lab confirmed in the report, the pressure pattern shows this person had significant weight and very steady steps. This is footprint X1. Matching the sample at Sinclair Loop. There was no longer any doubt. This alcove had been the initial holding location. Mason's blood traces, clearest evidence of where he was held. In the corner of the alcove, near the most heavily worn floor area, forensics detected a long dark brown streak, hidden under dust. Even after more than a year, Wingate sandstone's low absorbency preserved the blood at a molecular level. Test results: DNA matched Mason Hale. Not a handprint, not fallen hair, not incidental tissue, but blood. The amount was small but distinct, enough to prove Mason had been injured in this alcove. The blood location aligned with where Lily described Mason shielding her and being struck hard in the back, head or side. This evidence left the entire investigation team silent for several minutes. No one drew conclusions aloud, but everyone understood what it meant. The 3 were definitely brought here alive. Mason was injured right here, and from this point, traces diverged into 3 directions as forensics originally described. Female footprint, smaller circling movement. Forensics also found a series of smaller, lighter footprints with uneven force distribution, stride length only about 9 inches. These prints did not follow a straight path, but circled the alcove repeatedly, with sharp turns, as if someone was constantly moving in the confined space, exactly as Lily described. She walked around us, never stood still, always checking who was looking, who was reacting. The BAU noted in the file, footprint A1 female, low weight, unstable stride pattern, consistent with violence triggered by stimulation. Notably, Y1 prints overlapped some worn marks on the rock, strong force marks at several points, possibly kicking, stomping or shoving victims. Especially, Y1 prints appeared repeatedly many times, as if the female perpetrator frequently circled the victims during captivity. This matched Lily's account perfectly, what the alcove revealed, and what it did not. This alcove confirmed systematic victim captivity. Both male and female perpetrators were present here. Mason was injured here. Lily and likely Cole were also bound and supervised at this spot. But the alcove also showed one thing: it was not where Lily escaped from. No footprints leading down, no drag marks, no recent rope removal signs, no food, water, or fresh ash. This meant the place she was held after the initial phase was not this alcove. The perpetrators had multiple holding sites, or they moved victims on a cycle. The alcove in Wingate Sandstone was not just a holding site, it was a transfer point, the place where they categorized, evaluated, and split the three according to the rules Lily described. Right after the holding alcove was discovered, the FBI immediately expanded collection of footprint samples, X1 and Y1 using 3D casting methods, then transferred the data to the Gait and Kinetics Registry, a specialized database for evaluating gait, stride and force distribution of individuals formerly in military units, professional rescue teams, or groups with documented off-grid survival records. The goal was not to find people with criminal records, but to identify those with training backgrounds, matching the perpetrator's footprint patterns. 3 days later, an alert appeared in the system: potential match. Former U.S. military survival unit. The X1 boot data matched the stride pattern of someone formerly in a military survival unit, discharged many years earlier, Caleb Frost, born 1988, who served in a small team conducting long-term concealment movement survival missions in harsh environments. Military records noted Caleb's abilities, moving over rock without leaving footprints, climbing slick rock without equipment, surviving weeks with self-made water sources, setting up hidden camps deep in alcoves and canyons. These matched perfectly with the behavior at Wingate Sandstone. However, when the FBI contacted for verification, they received an unexpected response. Caleb Frost went missing in 2016. Family reported he went deep wilderness to live off-grid for a few months and never returned. No body, no large-scale search. Caleb vanished from society without leaving any message. Family believed he died in the desert or committed suicide, but no evidence. Military records described Caleb as extremely disciplined, quiet, efficient in actions, and tending not to show emotions. Unit psychological profile noted: ability for prolonged solitary living, far above normal, likes to control surrounding environment. This corresponded to Lily's words: he didn't speak. No reaction, like viewing us as prey. Footprint Y1, a woman, but who? While Caleb's identity could be confirmed through X1 footprint, identifying the smaller, more unstable Y1 footprint was far harder. Y1 showed short stride length, strong force variation, preference for violence, circling movement around victims. This behavior led the BAU to search for women living off society, with histories of violence or disappearances in the western United States. After 6 days of screening, they narrowed to 19 women missing in wilderness settings, but only one had been reported missing right in the Utah-Colorado area at the exact time after Caleb vanished. Her name was Maya Frost, born 1994, half-sister to Caleb. Maya disappeared in 2017. No belongings left behind. No return to university. No phone, social media, or financial activity after that point. Family reported Maya left home after a major argument and possibly ran off with a boyfriend. No one connected her disappearance to Caleb until Y1 footprint was 3D reconstructed and compared to a 7-year-old emergency room record. In a bicycle accident in 2015, a local hospital had measured Maya's foot size for an ankle brace. That record still existed. When the FBI compared Y1 footprint data, results matched 86%, enough to consider her a high-probability suspect. 2 years after Caleb vanished, the young woman Maya also disappeared from the world, but forensics made it clear this was not a victim, not someone forced to accompany, but an accomplice. Because Y1 footprint showed prints circling the alcove, heavy stomps at victim seating positions, drag marks of heavy objects, characteristic force placement, straight from heel to toe when applying violence. Lily had described, she liked it when someone was afraid. Her eyes changed. The BAU classified Maya as stimulation-triggered violence, the subordinate perpetrator role creating fear, in contrast to Caleb's cold discipline. 2 people, 1 hunting pattern, predatory pair, outdoors territory. After obtaining names Caleb and Maya Frost, the FBI compiled all forensics, footprint statements, and prior hiker disappearance histories in Canyonlands and Maze District. Everything remodeled this pair's behavior: Caleb, leading routes, deciding tactics, selecting targets; Maya maintaining psychological terror, applying violence, controlling weaker victims. When inputting this data into the federal perpetrator classification system, the investigation team received a warning about an extremely rare branch: predatory, pair, outdoors territory, hunters. Characteristics: 1. Operate as a pair, each with different roles. 2. No material gain sought, motive not money, sex or grudge, but systematic hunting behavior. 3. Choose wilderness environments, where law enforcement has limited access. 4. Build territory, usually around a hidden alcove or canyon. 5. Stalk victims from distance, selecting those fitting the hunt. 6. Move like predators, making no noise. 7. No communication with victims, only tactical exchange between themselves or body signals. 8. Repeat pattern over many years, at least from 2016 until Lily's escape. This classification applies to less than 1% of perpetrator pairs nationwide. In the behavioral analysis report, the BAU noted, Caleb Frost is the tactical lead force. Maya Frost is the violence force. Together they form a closed, self-sufficient unit, maintaining cyclical human hunting. Investigation shifts direction. Caleb and Maya are not fleeing, they are avoiding detection. With identities established, the FBI had clear direction on 2 targets: Caleb Frost, Maya Frost. Not 2 lost people, not prior victims, not completely natural off-grid living. Footprint evidence, nylon material, blood traces, and Lily's statement all showed they actively hunted people, actively moved victims, actively erased traces, for many years. Canyonlands was where Caleb once trained. Mays District was where Maya vanished. Wingate Sandstone was an area only the highly experienced would dare live long-term. And now, the entire investigation landscape had changed. No longer a disappearance, no longer a kidnapping, no longer an accident. Now the FBI had to hunt an organized predatory pair, operating on superior survival skills, and hiding in a place where footprints do not exist. Right after identifying the perpetrators as Caleb Frost and Maya Frost, the FBI immediately reopened all missing persons files in the Utah, Colorado, Arizona area over the past 10 years. Among them, 3 disappearances previously classified as navigation error began showing numerous anomalies when re-examined under the new forensic light. This review led to a critical discovery: at least 3 disappearances from 2019 to 2021 had material samples matching traces found in Caleb and Maya's alcove. Soil and wood particles identical, no random coincidence. The FBI reanalyzed soil samples previously collected from the old cases. At the time, they were only noted as environmental data, insufficient for conclusions. But when compared to the Wingate sandstone soil on Lily's clothing and in the alcove, the geological analysis team recognized many similarities. 2019 disappearance: 2 hikers in Needles District. Inside the missing person's shoes was a small amount of pale yellow soil. Upon retesting, the lab found quartz grain size 0.4 to 0.6 millimeters. Small mica fragments reflecting silver light, red sand, layering exactly matching Wingate sandstone style. Results matched 91% with the Frost alcove sample. 2020 disappearance: solo tourist from Reno. On the backpack strap found at the last seen point were tiny wood fragments identified as pinyon pine, a species growing sparsely near deep alcoves in Wingate sandstone. 2021 disappearance: a university student from Denver. The victim's bandana, found on a cliff 12 miles from the disappearance point, had red dust containing rare kaolinite clay, only appearing in a few narrow areas of southern Mays District. When forensics cross-referenced the data, they concluded the 3 2019-2021 disappearances were all linked to the same Wingate sandstone region Caleb and Maya used as their territory. This escalated the severity many times over, no longer in doubt as isolated activity. This was a multi-year uninterrupted human hunting cycle. Hidden cabin, holding items from multiple different victims based on footprint data and movement routes. The search team expanded southeast of the holding alcove. After 2 days searching along cliff edges, a ranger group discovered concealed wood drag marks under fresh soil. A very subtle narrow trail led to what appeared to be a sealed rock crevice. At the end of that crevice, they discovered a hidden cabin, only about 40 square feet, built from weathered wood, camouflaged with red dirt, to blend into natural rock. Inside the dusty cabin, but not completely abandoned. No signs of current occupancy, but a wooden shelf holding sunglasses, small-size women's hiking boots, 2 older Garmin sports watches, a blue Hydro Flask water bottle, a map with torn left edge, a dark red bandana. All were collected for testing. Within 48 hours, the lab returned results. The Garmin watch belonged to the 2019 missing hiker. The sunglasses matched the description from the 2020 victim. The water bottle had faint fingerprints compatible with the 2021 Denver student. The bandana contained unidentified DNA, but pattern-matching family description of a victim. This cabin was not a regular dwelling, not a sun shelter. This was where Caleb and Maya collected victim belongings, or stripped them before moving to other alcoves. One technical agent stated clearly, this cabin was intentionally built to be undetectable from afar. These are remnants of repeated behavior, not accident. Map with 5 circled points, all with missing people. Inside the cabin, a dusty Canyonlands topographic map was found. One corner scorched, but the most important part still clear. 5 pencil circles marked. 1. Syncline Loop, where Mason, Lily, and Cole disappeared. 2. Lost Canyon Trail, where the 2 2019 hikers vanished. 3. Devil's Lane, 2020 disappearance. 4. Pete's Mesa, where the 2021 student was last seen. 5. Shot Canyon, 2018 unsolved disappearance. Each circle was near sheltered rock corridors, easy to observe from above, and hard to detect from ground level. The BOE immediately assessed. Caleb selected hunting points, based on terrain pattern, not victim pattern. The pencil circling style also showed the frost pair, monitored each area long-term, planned in advance, identified locations where victims could be easily separated, and treated the map as a hunting grid. Not coincidence, not emotional target selection, not random opportunity. All data showed, Caleb and Maya built a hunting territory, spanning dozens of miles in Canyonlands over many years. Forensic links, all leading to one truth. When compiling final data, forensics issued a preliminary report. Soil on Lily's clothing matched the region of 5 other disappearances. Cabin held items from 2019, 2021 victims. Map marked 5 locations with missing people. X1/Y1 footprints appeared in the alcove, and on routes matching old cases, nylon rope, cloth strips, and samples showed identical usage patterns. This was not scattered connections, but a systematic operation by the Caleb and Maya Frost pair. From 2016, when Caleb disappeared, to 2017, when Maya vanished, to 2019, 2021, when 3 other disappearances occurred, all formed a unified chain, not impulsive behavior, not one time, not just the Mason, Lily Cole case. This was a deliberate, prepared, cyclical human hunting pattern with rules. The maze, the terrain so complex that even National Park Service topographic maps only capture a small portion. Canyons intertwined like a labyrinth. Sheer cliffs, hundreds of meters high, many paths suddenly ending in drop-offs, and no communication signal across most of the area. If Canyonlands is wilderness, the maze is its most dangerous heart. After the hidden cabin holding victim items was discovered, the FBI decided to launch a large-scale hunt into the maze. The area assessed as central to Caleb and Maya Frost's movement pattern. The federal operations team split into 3 groups, 1 ground tracking team, 1 cliff climbing team, and 1 thermal drone surveillance team, capable of detecting the smallest survival signs. Just 14 hours into continuous flight, the surveillance team's infrared drone detected something that froze everyone. Cabin vacated only hours earlier. In a deep rock pocket about 6 miles from Pete's Mesa, the drone spotted a small wooden structure pressed against rock, too small to see from ground, but enough for thermal camera to register abnormal heat loss. meaning the place had people or fire within 3 to 6 hours before the drone arrived. When the ground team approached, they found the cabin hastily built, but suspiciously clean. No food, no clothing, no signs of random abandonment. It was unlike the previous cabin, the old one holding multiple victim items. This cabin resembled a mobile temporary shelter, designed for quick relocation or dismantling. But forensics quickly discovered the critical detail: stone hearth still faintly warm, some fresh ash not yet scattered, and dust streaks erased using a large branch, characteristic sign of Caleb. There was no longer any doubt, the Frost pair had left only hours earlier. Abandoned camera, and images of Mason bound inside. Beside the cabin was an item no one expected to find in such wilderness: a small rugged travel camera, the type designed for dust and heavy vibration. It lay under a torn cloth, as if dropped or forgotten when the cabin was cleared. The tech team did a quick on-site check, memory card intact. When the screen lit up, the first image silenced the entire team completely. Mason Hale bound with nylon rope, sitting against rock, eyes tense but still alert. The images were not video, but a series of photos taken from a low angle, no flash, as if the photographer deliberately recorded without drawing attention. Though timestamps were corrupted due to camera clock drift, forensics determined color degradation and oxidation levels, showed the photos were taken in the first week after Mason, Lily, and Cole disappeared. There were at least 7 pictures: Mason bound at wrists and ankles, dried blood on his left cheekbone, shirt torn at the shoulder, background rock matching Wingate sandstone type from the alcove. But the most critical detail was in the left corner of the 6th photo, a shadow of a person outside the frame, only lower legs visible, exactly the military-style boot of footprint X1. This was the first physical evidence in a year confirming Mason survived after being separated from the group, and had been in the Frost pair's holding alcove. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood: the clearer the photos, the closer the timing to the disappearance date, the lower Mason's current survival chances. But the cabin had been used only hours earlier, meaning Caleb and Maya could still be in the maze. ATV tire tracks, heading toward Dollhouse Overlook, a few dozen meters from the cabin. The tracking team discovered something no one thought would appear in a motorized vehicle restricted zone: old but identifiable ATV tire tracks. The maze is almost impossible for motorized vehicles. Terrain too narrow, slopes too steep, and absolutely restricted by NPS. But the traces here were not fresh. They were deep-worn off-road tires, angled consistently, apparently used for years. When forensics compared to photos inside the cabin, they noticed soil stuck to Maya's boots in one image, matched the tire rim particles. The ATV tracks headed toward Dollhouse Overlook, one of the most treacherous places in Canyonlands, a series of towering rock spires, like ancient Native American dwellings, with passages only shoulder wide. The route to Dollhouse is full of steep inclines, narrow crevices, loose rock. Normal ATVs could not pass. But Caleb may have modified one, or built a lightweight custom frame years ago. The tire tracks extended about half a mile, then vanished completely on slick rock. Classic Caleb evasion tactic: drive vehicle onto slick rock, change direction, disappear into overlapping canyons. Though the ATV tracks were old, they still provided 2 critical pieces of information. 1. The Frost pair used motorized transport deep in the maze, something the investigation team had never considered. 2. Direction toward Dollhouse Overlook showed they had an operational axis between multiple hidden points. The cabin was only an intermediate stop. Terrain reveals one reality: Caleb knows the maze like the back of his hand. The maze is a place many survival experts abandon exploration after a few days, but footprints and dust patterns in the cabin all proved Caleb had lived in this area for years. Agents noted, cabin location matched natural wind shelter, secret trail led to a small but reliable water source, cabin building material was pinyon wood, only obtainable from over 10 miles away, stone slab used as eating table, showed even handwear marks, and small stacked rocks in pattern form, a trail marker system only someone familiar would recognize. This meant Caleb was not just hiding, he had settled, adapted, structured routes. The pursuit team decides to launch Operation Deep into Dollhouse when combining the evidence: cabin vacated recently, camera photos of Mason ATV tracks toward Dollhouse, X1 and Y1 footprints in the cabin. The FBI issued orders. Caleb and Maya Frost are still moving within the maze. Dollhouse Overlook is the most likely direction. The pursuit team was ordered to advance deep into that area under high alert status, because if the Frost pair knew their cabin was discovered, they could change routes or hide in one of hundreds of alcoves in the zone. The maze had never felt this close, and never this terrifying, not just because of the terrain, but because of the presence of two people who had lived here as apex predators for years. The maze had never been this quiet. The night wind whistled through the rock formations like a low, ominous sigh, and the darkness clung to every cliff edge, making any movement dangerous. The FBI tactical team was advancing toward Dollhouse Overlook, following the route identified from the abandoned cabin. Each member maintained tactical spacing, moving silently through the narrow rock crevices. They knew Caleb Frost had served in a military survival unit. A man like him would see darkness and treacherous terrain as absolute advantages. The tactical team leader signaled a halt when he detected something quieter than footsteps: a faint pebble slide from a higher position, to the right of the formation. The sound lasted only half a second, but anyone experienced in cliff operations knew that was not a natural fall. Someone was moving. The agents locked onto the position, switching to thermal mode on night vision goggles. But nighttime rock temperatures in the maze dropped sharply, making every surrounding surface the same cold thermal signature. Extremely hard to separate a human figure in just seconds. One agent whispered over radio, "Being watched, right side 20 feet up." Before the sentence finished, a dark figure launched down from the upper ledge with speed too fast for instinctive reaction. Caleb did not charge straight into the formation. He angled left, choosing a landing point 4 to 5 meters from the tactical team, then rolled to absorb impact, like the trained maneuver soldiers use when dropping into hostile zones. The blade appeared in his hand, not from a sheath, but from inside his boot, drawn in one motion. Caleb spun, lunging behind one agent before the full team could reposition, but tactical was prepared for this. They knew ambush was Caleb's strength. In the moment he raised his arm to take down the nearest agent, the one on the left drove straight into him on a diagonal cut, locking his back and trying to wrench his arms behind. Caleb surged powerfully, enough for both to slam back first into the rock wall. The impact echoed loudly, reverberating through the canyon like metal dropping. He drove an elbow into the agent's ribs, a blow hard enough to drop the man to one knee. Two more agents rushed in immediately. The struggle unfolded in darkness, only heavy breathing audible, rocks crunching under boots, and wrists slamming together as all tried to control one man with close quarters survival attack skills. Caleb made no shouts, no curses, no sound at all. He fought like someone who had done this for years in silence. The tactical team tried to pin him down, but he continuously shifted weight, slipping over shoulders, lunging as if to crawl into a narrow crevice beside them. If he reached it, he could vanish in under 20 seconds. The team leader shouted, "Lock the legs, lock the legs." One agent flashed a strobe light directly in Caleb's face. For 1 second, he lost orientation. 3 men simultaneously forced him down onto the rock, pinning shoulders and back to prevent flipping. After exactly 4 minutes of intense struggle, the click of figure-8 cuffs rang out in the crevice. Caleb Frost was subdued. The seconds afterward were filled with silence. His breathing remained even, not ragged, as if the fight was just routine. Agents quickly searched him. 3 handmade blades, a steel lighter, thin paracord coiled around his waist, and a torn hand-drawn map piece, exactly in his known style. No sign of Maya. When an agent asked directly, "Where is she?" Caleb looked straight at the questioner, without blinking. Flashlight reflected eyes empty in a way hard to comprehend. He said not one word. No further resistance, no cooperation, just stood motionless in the crevice like living stone. No one knew if his silence was natural, or because he knew anything said now could reveal his accomplice's position. The tactical team bound his legs and escorted him to the rally point. While leading him away, Caleb turned his face toward the eastern part of the maze, as if something there still needed protecting. But no agent could pinpoint that location in the pitch blackness. One thing was certain: Caleb had not been alone when shadowing the search team. Extra secondary footprints, fresh soil on the ledge edge, and light scrape marks on the wall, all showed Maya had been in the area, only meters away, or minutes. Caleb was captured, but the hunt in Canyonlands was not over, and the maze, as always, revealed no secrets easily. While Caleb Frost was being escorted out of the maze, the FBI immediately expanded the capture radius across the entire eastern Canyonlands area. Based on traces from the cabin and analysis of the Frost pair's familiar escape patterns, the federal tracking team concluded that if Maya left the maze that night, the most likely direction she would choose would not be back toward Utah Highway 211 like a normal fugitive, but moving into the least expected area, Capitol Reef National Park, a place treacherous enough to hide, but with enough visitors to blend in. About 36 hours after Caleb's capture, the first report came in. 2 Colorado tourists called emergency services from the Hickman Bridge area, saying a thin woman with messy hair, carrying a black backpack, stood less than 15 meters away, continuously watching them as if assessing something. They saw her hiding behind a large rock, moving parallel to them without speaking, without greeting, without asking for directions, completely unlike normal hiker behavior. One tourist recounted that her eyes didn't look like someone lost, but like someone choosing a target. Description matched 90% with Lily's hospital account. The FBI immediately cordoned the area. The NPS and FBI tactical teams approached the Hickman Bridge zone from 2 directions, one team from the north along the main trail, the second circling from the southern rock slope to block retreat. Experience from capturing Caleb made them extremely cautious. Maya had also been trained in military survival by Caleb, and according to Lily, the female perpetrator was quiet but abnormally violent. As the northern team neared the narrow canyon section leading to Hickman Bridge, they spotted the first trace, a smaller footprint, women's boot pressed into sandy soil, running parallel to the main trail, but choosing concealed viewpoints. Classic stalker movement. Just minutes later, 2 panicked screams echoed from the canyon head. The tactical team rushed forward. Tactical flashlights swept along the canyon walls, and they saw the scene: a young tourist couple backed against the canyon wall, while in front of them, about 4 meters away, Maya Frost stood holding a short knife gleaming under the lights. Her stance showed she had just lunged, but missed due to the target's sudden evasion. When she realized multiple light sources were surrounding her, Maya spun with speed that seemed to make her vanish. She did not run into open space, but slipped straight into a narrow rock crevice barely wide enough for a person. That was the choice typical of those long accustomed to cliff environments, hiding in spaces pursuers could hardly access. But Tactical was prepared. 2 agents climbed the upper ledge, shining lights down the crevice. Maya clawed at the walls, wriggling like a cornered animal. One agent on the ground shouted, "Do not move. Drop the knife." Maya did not stop. She lunged toward the right crevice that led to a direct drop down jagged loose rock. Tactical understood that if she escaped that way and vanished into the rock gullies, the hunt could drag on for days. One agent fired a taser, shooting quickly through the crevice. 2 electrodes lodged in Maya's clothing, causing her body to seize rigid then collapse. The taser was set to proper power to avoid serious injury, but enough to eliminate resistance. Maya was pulled from the crevice after 45 seconds of control. She still gripped the knife until her wrists were cuffed. Only when brought into strong light did agents clearly see Maya's condition: body thin from long-term malnutrition, arms tanned dark, but with old bruises, hands calloused like someone who climbs rock barehanded, eyes showing no panic, just a cold, empty stare. When an agent asked, "What were you planning to do to those 2?" Maya slowly turned her head, looking straight as if unaware of being surrounded by over 8 armed people. She spoke in an even voice, no tremor, no anger. "We only hunt those worthy of the challenge." The statement left the entire tactical group silent for several seconds. It sounded more like a declaration than a defense. Forensics did an immediate backpack search at the scene. Inside 2 coils of specialized nylon rope matching Lily's binding marks, 3 handmade knives sharpened only with desert stone, 4 old cloth pieces with dried blood, possibly from other victims, and most notable, a small printed map of the Capitol Reef area, with 5 points marked in red ink, matching the pattern from the cabin map the FBI recovered. The lead agent noted, Maya had no intention of fleeing. She was moving to select a new target, exactly as the behavioral pattern analyzed from prior disappearances. As she was escorted from the crevice, Maya looked up at the sky with strange calm, as if not believing this was the end. For one moment, she turned back toward the Hickman Bridge trail behind her, where the 2 tourists still stood trembling against the wall. She looked at them not with hatred, but as if evaluating and concluding they did not meet the standard. No agent said it aloud, but everyone understood that if Tactical had arrived 3 minutes later, the outcome for those 2 tourists could have been different. Maya Frost was captured without further resistance, but her calm, and that chilling statement, made investigators realize they were facing not just a suspect, but someone who believed her actions were a form of ritual. Right after Maya Frost was captured at Capitol Reef, the FBI and NPS immediately reopened the entire maze area, especially the routes Caleb and Maya might have used to transport or abandon victims. Maya did not admit to causing anyone's death, but her statement, "We only hunt those worthy of the challenge," made investigators understand that what they were searching for might not just be traces, but bodies. The forensic team returned to Wingate Sandstone, where the temporary cabin had been abandoned. The goal now was to find any rock pocket the Frost pair might have used as a victim elimination point. Based on footprints, movement habits, and Maya's circled map, the FBI narrowed the range to the canyon strip between Shot Canyon and Jasper Ridge, a zone with crevices so narrow sunlight only reached inside for minutes a day. 3 days after Maya's capture, terrain drones with gas sensors began registering an anomaly in the air. Higher concentrations of organic decomposition compounds than the surrounding rock baseline. This is a common sign when remains are decaying in a wind-sheltered spot. Survey agents confirmed the location deep in a narrow branch of Jasper Canyon, accessible only by crawling or low climbing. As the tracking team entered, they had to remove small rocks one by one to pass. No surface footprints because wind had erased them, but rocks on both sides of the crevice showed faint scratches, signs of something heavy dragged through long ago. About 60 meters from the crevice mouth, they saw the first thing, a rotted nylon strand caught in a rock crack. When forensics shone light on it, the nylon pattern matched the binding rope found in the Wingate alcove. 8 meters deeper, the decomposition smell became distinct, and in the darkest corner of the crevice, where light could not reach, they found a folded shape under loose rock debris. The body of a young man, body condition, signs of binding and severe beating. The body was not fully intact. Fluctuating temperatures, extreme dryness, and low ventilation caused decomposition in a desiccation form, skin shriveled, some facial bones, partially exposed. Still, forensics identified immediately, hands bound with nylon, 2 loops, matching the technique found on Lily, legs tied with thicker cord, military style, a large skull fracture, inconsistent with natural fall injury, jawbone showing fracture from heavy blunt force. The body position also revealed much. Cole lay on his side, as if abandoned while bound, not placed carefully. Rock beneath his back showed scrape marks, indicating he had tried to shift, while still alive or just before losing mobility. Clothing torn in patches, especially left shoulder and right arm, matching drag positions. DNA from Cole's wrists showed deep binding grooves, proving he was still alive when bound, or at least freshly bound when dragged into the crevice. Forensics assessed, Cole died from severe head trauma, not dehydration or exhaustion. Traces show Cole was attacked while resisting at the scene. Forensics found 14 scratch marks on the crevice walls at consistent height, about Cole's chin and shoulder level. These were not impact scratches, but but fingernail marks, from the victim trying to grip rock to avoid being dragged. On the rock face 2 meters from the body was a dried blood streak in a drag pattern, 30 centimeters long, matching the smear when a bound victim is pulled by arm or collar. Combined signs created an almost certain scenario. Cole resisted while being dragged. He was struck hard in the head with a blunt object, possibly rock or knife handle. After losing resistance ability, he was pulled into this crevice. Perpetrators left immediately afterward, without returning. Estimated time of death within the first 48 to 72 hours after disappearance. This chillingly matched Lily's words, "Anyone who resists, gets handled first." Maya's DNA, first direct evidence, on Cole's right wrist bone. Forensics discovered a series of small bite marks, not deep but enough to recover residual DNA in tooth crevices. Testing took 36 hours, results returned. Maya Frost's DNA present on the bite. This placed Maya directly at Cole's attack, not Caleb. This data aligned with Lily's memory reconstruction session. The female perpetrator handled the strongest resistors, often striking when the victim was exhausted but still struggling. FBI file confirmed. Cole was the first victim eliminated among the three. Not Mason, not Lily, but Cole, the one described as fit, athletic, and often leading the group. Perpetrators chose Cole first, not because he was weak, but because he was strongest. This reinforced the behavioral pattern. The Frost pair prioritized attacking the highest resistance threat to break group balance. Scene proves intentional elimination point. Beyond nylon rope and bloodied rock, forensics found details proving this crevice was not where Cole accidentally collapsed. Extremely narrow entrance, ideal for controlling a victim. No water source, meaning no intent to hold long term. Both walls showed wear from hard objects, possibly knife or rock, deliberately creating markers only the Frost pair would recognize, and especially the small stacked rocks beside the body, in the pattern seen in the cabin and alcove. Caleb's personal location marker system, no signs small animals dragged the body. Everything remained as perpetrators left it. Investigation team concluded, this was an elimination crevice, a pre-selected spot, used or intended for handling resisting victims. This discovery helped the FBI better understand the Frost pair's methods, separate the group, eliminate the strongest first to reduce counterattack risk, use natural terrain as tool instead of complex weapons. Identity confirmation, dental records, bone samples, and remaining details were sufficient to confirm the body as Cole Barrett. Information forwarded to Canyonlands Command Center. No press conference, no hasty announcement, just one short message. First victim has been located. No speculation, no extra analysis, just a truth heavy as Canyonlands red rock. Cole Barrett, the first friend of the three who vanished, did not survive past the third day. Right after Cole's body was found and fully identified, the investigation team shifted focus to the remaining person, Mason Hale. The images in the camera Caleb left behind at the cabin had shown Mason bound, beaten, and still alive in the first week of disappearance, but the exact location where he was held, taken, or killed, remained undetermined. And unlike Cole, who was found in the Jasper crevice, Mason's case was far more complicated. Forensics began by fully reconstructing the three people's journey based on footprints, timing, routes, terrain and cabin positions. When overlaying Caleb and Maya's movement map with collected evidence, a pattern emerged. Mason was not eliminated at the same place Cole was handled. His traces appeared farther, at least 4 to 6 miles north, in harsher terrain near Devil's Lane. The first notable point was a dark red blood streak discovered on a rock ledge beside Shot Canyon. Forensics tested with luminol and rapid analysis showed it was Mason's blood, high concentration, splattered horizontally, consistent with severe impact. Based on splatter angle and streak length, forensics concluded Mason had been struck or slammed into the rock wall during a struggle. Subsequent staggering marks, imprinted in fine dust captured by drone, showed he still managed to walk a short distance, though blood traces diminished gradually, indicating massive blood loss. At another point, about 300 meters away, the investigation team discovered 2 dried blood drops on a slab, with nylon rope scrape marks. Upon analysis, they realized this was not blood from forehead or impact wounds, but from wrist cuts, matching the tight binding style seen on Lily. One forensic agent stated very clearly, no one could survive this amount of blood loss, especially in an environment of 104 degrees Fahrenheit days and 46 degrees Fahrenheit nights. This was not speculation, it was a medical conclusion based on blood loss volume, weather conditions, and injury mechanism. Why no body found? The biggest question in the entire investigation: where was Mason? What happened to his body? The maze is notorious for terrain, with hundreds of crevices, rock pockets, and drops tens of meters deep, many so narrow they cannot be entered. Caleb Frost could have used one of these points according to 3 forensic possibilities. One body taken down a deep crevice that drones or ground teams cannot access. Many narrow canyons are only enterable by advanced rock climbers. Caleb served in a survival unit. This makes the possibility very high. 2 body fully decomposed due to sun exposure, hot winds, and small scavengers. Canyonlands has many nocturnal scavengers. Rapid desiccation in dry conditions can reduce a body to scattered bones in weeks. 3 body covered by natural rockfall. Many areas in the maze have large thin slabs that can collapse from light impact. Natural slides could have buried Mason's body permanently. Forensics lean toward the first possibility, based on extended drag marks deep at Devil's Lane, 12-centimeter smears on rock matching the direction of pulling a heavy object. Final evidence: absolutely no survival possible. The key forensic element came from blood samples found at 3 different points: streak on the ledge, drops on the large slab, blood on nylon strand found near Devil's Lane crevice. All 3 locations over 400 meters apart, all 3 containing Mason's DNA, and in all 3, hemoglobin concentration indicated over 40% blood volume loss, a level unsurvivable without immediate medical treatment, especially in desert conditions. Forensics noted clearly in the report, Mason Hale could not move under his own power after this injury. Massive blood loss led to death on site, or within 1 to 3 hours after primary trauma. No exceptions, no miracle cases. This was an indisputable medical conclusion. Signs of concealment behavior. Several key pieces of evidence suggested deliberate concealment by perpetrators. Soil and rock on the slab near blood streak, disturbed horizontally, not by wind, under one boulder. Mason's hair strands, trapped. A small stacked rock pile, matching Caleb's marker pattern, found a few steps away. That stack was not a grave, nor a body marker. It resembled a sign to help perpetrators remember routes or mark a processed area. This intentionality clarified one thing: Mason did not die from accident, not from getting lost, not from exhaustion. He died from direct action by one or both perpetrators. Official statement. After compiling all samples, forensics, Caleb's camera photos, Lily's account, and the Frost pair's behavioral pattern, the FBI issued the official conclusion: Mason Hale died due to perpetrator actions. Body not recovered, but physical evidence exceeds threshold to classify as homicide. The release was brief, without details on blood points or locations. Based on forensic evidence, we determine Mason Hale died in Canyonlands. Search for remains continues. No speculation, no room for false hope, just the heavy truth. Mason was gone, and he died not because of nature, but because of 2 people who chose to turn the desert into their hunting ground. The failure to locate Mason's body did not diminish the legal weight of the case. After nearly 3 months compiling forensic files, statements, footprint analysis, marked maps, DNA, blood samples, and crime scenes, the United States Department of Justice decided to prosecute both Caleb Frost and Maya Frost at the federal level. Reason: the crimes occurred on federal land, National Park Service jurisdiction, automatically falling under federal authority, especially involving abduction, detention and transport of victims across national park areas. The indictment exceeded 300 pages, listing 42 physical exhibits, 112 forensic descriptions, 7 criminal behavior analyses. Lily's full statement, photos from the cabin recovered camera, and the entire trace system from the maze to Capitol Reef. Charges against Caleb Frost. Caleb faced the two heaviest federal charges applicable when victims die without body recovery. 1. Kidnapping resulting in death. Mason Hale evidence. Mason's blood streaks at 3 different locations. Binding rope matching the type Caleb used. Photos of bound Mason in Caleb's camera. Drag marks and X1 footprints. Caleb's boots. Blood loss exceeding survival threshold. Federal law does not require a body, only proof the victim died due to defendant's actions. Forensics met this overwhelmingly. 2. Kidnapping resulting in death. Cole Barrett Caleb was not the one inflicting the fatal injury, but under law, an accomplice participating in abduction and detention bears responsibility for death occurring during the process. Evidence: Caleb's footprints at the scene where Cole was dragged, binding rope matching type Caleb carried, maps marking holding and elimination points. Lily's statement describing Caleb handling victim separation. Caleb said not one word throughout the trial. He only stared straight ahead. No reaction as the prosecutor read the charges. Charges against Maya Frost. In contrast to Caleb, Maya faced direct charges based on forensic evidence, DNA, and being caught in the act at Capitol Reef. 1. Murder. Federal jurisdiction. Victim Cole Barrett evidence. Bite marks on Cole's wrist containing Maya's DNA. Maya's hair in Jasper crevice. Impact force analysis, showing head wounds consistent with her height and strength. Lily's statement. Maya handled resistors. 2. Kidnapping. Lily Navarro evidence. Nylon rope matching samples from Maya's backpack. Maya's DNA on items used to bind Lily. Female U1 footprints in Wingate alcove. 3. Attempted kidnapping. Capitol Reef incident aggravating factors. Caught at scene with knife nylon rope map marking target selection points. During trial, Maya spoke exactly 2 sentences, one of which silenced the entire courtroom. We do not hunt to kill, we hunt to challenge. This statement went straight into the record, not as justification, but as proof of absolute recidivism risk. The trial lasted 18 days. The federal courtroom in Salt Lake City was packed with NPS agents, FBI, victim families, and reporters. But unlike high-profile media cases, the atmosphere here was not loud. It was heavy and silent, like Canyonlands desert itself. Federal prosecution presented in forensic sequence. 1. Initial footprints at Syncline Loop. 2. Struggle traces in the holding alcove. 3. Detention alcove with Mason's blood. 4. Jasper crevice containing Cole's body. 5. Cabin camera photos of bound Mason. 6. 2 maps marking victim locations. 7. Maya's backpack containing hunting tools, each exhibit projected on large screen. No one in the room breathed heavily. No one looked away from every detail. Defense did not contest forensic evidence, because they could not. All traces were too clear and interlocking for any argument to shift. The only point they attempted was prolonged psychological influence between Caleb and Maya, but given preparation level, years-long duration, marked maps, evasion behavior, and repeated pattern across multiple disappearances, the argument was dismissed almost immediately. Verdict on sentencing day. The judge read each charge calmly but coldly. Caleb Frost, 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. Kidnapping resulting in death. Cole kidnapping resulting in death. Mason Maya Frost, 1 life sentence without parole, plus 2 concurrent life sentences. Murder. Cole Barrett kidnapping. Lily Navarro, attempted kidnapping. Capitol Reef. Neither showed remorse. No plea for leniency. No argument. Caleb kept the empty stare from his arrest moment. Maya only smiled faintly, as if the sentence was for someone else. FBI agent's conclusion. After the trial, a veteran FBI agent, who followed the case from day one, stood before Canyonlands Red Dust in a short press conference. He said one sentence only: if Lily had not survived, they probably would never have been caught. Not because forensics were weak, not because the investigation was slow, but because Caleb and Maya Frost understood Canyonlands terrain better than anyone, and they were only exposed by something they themselves did not expect: a living victim. The story of 3 friends disappearing in Canyonlands, and the hunt that lasted over a year, is not just a tragedy with true crime overtones. It reflects a clear reality of modern America: The wilderness never fully belongs to humans, and in a vast country like the United States, where breathtaking national parks are also places surrounded by danger, thorough preparation and vigilance remain the first line of defense. What happened to Mason, Cole, and Lily shows that disaster does not come only from nature. The strange footprints in military-style boots, the hidden cabin holding items from multiple victims, and the map circling 5 disappearance points are reminders that humans can become the greatest threat. In a nation where millions go hiking each year, this story forces us to ask, do we truly understand the risks when stepping into the wilderness? The clearest first lesson is never to underestimate the value of location reporting skills. The FBI agent said it straight. If Lily had not survived, Caleb and Maya Frost might still be free. Lily remembering the alcove, describing the perpetrator's boots, and confirming the group separation pattern were the key factors that broke the case. That reminds every one of us when entering wilderness areas: share your itinerary, enable location tracking, and carry satellite positioning devices, things that can make the difference between life and death. The second lesson relates to today's American community. Do not ignore behavior that makes you feel uneasy. The 2 tourists at Capitol Reef simply did the right thing, reporting immediately when they saw Maya following them, and that action saved them while helping stop a new chain of attacks. In the United States, where freedom to explore nature is part of the culture, this story reminds us that freedom cannot exist without one element: responsibility to protect ourselves. If you want to keep following stories of survival, justice, and mysterious cases like Canyonlands, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any journey. Thank you for staying until the end of the story, and see you in the next video, where we continue exploring the truth behind the shadows of America.